Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast. My name is Steven, and I am your host. And my Mac just died. So apologies for the late start, but thankfully I have a work laptop, and that's what I'll be using today. Shh, don't tell my work. Happy to dive in today to the final preseason game. The Chargers obviously coming out victorious last night, 23-12. And we'll also have our 53-man roster projection. Joining me to do that is my guy, Tyler. Tyler, what's up, man? You look very festive this morning, and we're in August. So I guess you're already looking forward to Christmas?
Yeah, just, a good morning show. Got to wear some pajamas, of course. So here I am representing in the pajamas. I've got all sorts of random stuff I could wear on these streams. And see, your Mac failing is just further proof why Alex and I are right. I have an Android and he has an Android. And those Apple products are inferior.
Hey, my Mac lasted me since 2014, so it's got a lot of mileage on it and lots of film watching and everything. So it's been good. I've been waiting to, push in the boundaries to see how long I could go without buying a new one. But apparently that time is now. So like I said, luckily I have a work computer and I'm able to use that.
Awesome. Well, everyone has another $800 to $500 or $1,000 just laying around to buy a new laptop, right?
Yeah, I might have to wait. So I might have to use my work computer a lot more often from now on, but we'll see how it goes. Speaking of like festiveness, are you a pumpkin coffee guy or no?
I like it, but it's not like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for it.
Yeah. Lots of people obviously associating the return of college football with pumpkin coffee. So I'm just glad that real football is back on the TV today.
Yeah, again, good for BYU for beating Utah, apparently.
You discovered the Holy War for the first time today, huh?
I mean, obviously I knew that there was a rivalry, but I didn't know it was called the Holy War, which is something. But
no, it's like it's a legit thing. And I mean, it's not as much of a thing as it used to be because Utah was in the Pac-12 and BYU was independent and they weren't playing each other as often. But yeah, when I was growing up, man, it was like, obviously the LDS church is so big in Utah, and it's like you didn't talk to people from your church for like 2 weeks while the game was happening. So it's very intense in Utah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right, so let's dive into this preseason game first, and then we'll get to our roster prediction here. Like I mentioned, Chargers winning 23-12. It was looking a little bleak there. The 49ers obviously playing their starters. Easton Stick got sacked by Fred Warner in like 0.25 seconds, and everybody was losing their minds. I'm like, I don't know what you want him to do in that scenario, but anyways, the Chargers backups kind of settled in, come out victorious. Tyler, what was kind of your biggest takeaway from last night?
Kind of the same as the first one, is this gosh darn run game and the way they're able to get it going really from start to finish, and even working the quarterbacks. We saw 5 other jet sweeps as well, and they were all successfully run. Like, they weren't fumbled. It almost felt like a here's this, I gotcha, look, we can do this correctly this year sort of thing, because it was just great to see that the Chargers had 2 quarterbacks who threw for 53 yards combined.
Yeah.
And they basically went, okay, we'll just run it. And they ran it, and they ran it successfully. And the numbers, I wanted them to just get a little bit more because the number looks cooler if they had 8 more yards. But still, the last 2 seasons, right? We talked about this the first game, or just in that one game, the running backs already had more yards than they did in the entire other preseasons combined, and just in that one game. But looking at it now, 3 games, compared to those 3 games, 208 yards rushing in 2021, 227 in 2022, and then 592 rushing yards in 2023. It does help a bit that you have Max Duggan, who can run, and Easton Stick can run. So that kind of does add things there. But you've got 2 running backs on your team that broke 100 yards, both I think over 140 yards. The run game looks good. And that's all they could do yesterday, basically. And it didn't matter. And look, the 49ers defensive front is no joke. I don't care if it's the first string guys, second string guys. That's a very well coached group. That's a very talented group.
And best defensive line coach in the league, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they had 260 something rushing yards. It was impressive. That's my biggest takeaway, because goodness, that was good.
Yeah, we talked on the Chargers feed about like, what we wanted to see different heading into this game. And the thing that I brought up was like I just felt like Kellen Moore was never really able to get the offense in rhythm. And some of that was player performance for sure. But he adjusted on the fly and he realized that the passing game was not necessarily working at the way that they wanted it to. And so they leaned into the run game. And I mentioned this after the first game. I love the diversity in which Kellen Moore can call these plays and the way that he can, kind of bounce some of these concepts outside of what is their traditional or I guess base runs, if you will, which are the inside runs. I know we had a lot of fun the last couple of years, not necessarily fun, but made fun of a lot of the jet sweeps and things like that, and doing it to Michael Mandy and Keenan Allen and Andre Roberts and all those guys. But when you are so heavily relying on inside runs, the jet sweep is a great way to loosen up the defenses and even just the motion. Like it gets the defense flowing. It gets the defense kind of wondering, like, oh, if are they actually going to hand this one off? Okay, they handed it off. Like now we have to go get it. And obviously, it helps to run it to the right kind of players, right? Obviously, it's different running it to Darius Davis than a guy like Michael Bandy, and Darius Shepard got a couple jet sweeps as well. So the identity was such a big issue for the Chargers in the run game last year, and that's not going to be the case this year. It's inside runs, it's downhill, it's we're going to come at you, and our guards are all fantastic pullers, whether it's Zion, Jamari, Jordan McFadden, Corey Linsley obviously is a fantastic puller. Rashawn Slater is a fantastic puller. Trey Pipkins. So it's exciting, man. Like we haven't seen the first team offense, obviously, outside of the scrimmage and outside of the the Saints joint practices, get a ton of like very valuable reps. But the way that the run game is cooking right now is very, very encouraging. And I mean, last night they had 41 rush attempts and 20 pass attempts. Like, when was the last time you could see that happening for a Chargers football game? So Kellen Moore has this run game cooking. I cannot wait to watch what it looks like with the starters because everything really has just kind of clicked into place with the second unit. And that should be very exciting when we get to see the starters come out in week 1.
Yeah, there was like a handful of things they could have done out of one thing in 2021. You really saw it against the Eagles with that RPO sort of thing. And Herbert really never kept it. I don't recall, maybe once.
Not very often, no.
But there was typically like, okay, someone on the deep over potentially, but they always had that motioning guy. It was like Josh Palmer, Andre Roberts, or whoever it was. And they could run like 5 different things out of that. And they kind of got away from that. Yeah. But it always seemed to be very successful. And now they're just kind of keeping that. But this time you have Darius Davis, sometimes Quentin Johnston. In practice, we've seen Isaiah Spiller be the guy on the jet sweep. But that is a big part of that read option for, I'm assuming, Justin Herbert. We'll see. So just be able to do that with those guys, with Eckler, Kelly, whoever. It's great to see that they're building that as a part of their offense. And it's great that they just, like you said, they just put this on film now. You do have to respect this because the Chargers just did it 5 times in one preseason game. Yep. So it's a real thing. So if it's Darius Davis, Quentin, Spiller, whoever, it is a real thing that they will have to keep in mind.
Yeah, and Kevin pointing out, the read option keepers. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Easton Stick, Max Duggan, you're really going to lean into that in the preseason because they can do that very, very well. And there's some other limitations out there, but Justin Herbert, like we've seen him do some speed options at practice. We've seen him do the read option keepers. He scored on a touchdown on Thursday, I believe, with a quarterback power read option kind of concept. So it's going to be a thing, and I think it's really going to benefit this team. And we've seen other teams like the Eagles and some of these other teams like the Ravens who have a running quarterback, and just like the gravity that option and that threat can take and free up some of your rushing concepts it's huge. And same thing with the jet sweeps if you can do those effectively. So there's just such a nice balance conceptually of what this run game has looked like, and it's exceeded all expectations to this point. Like there was a little bit in the first couple of weeks where it's like, oh, they're not really able to get much going on the ground, like it's kind of a work in progress, and then it's really come together very, very nicely over the last few weeks in particular. And like I said, I think with the diversity of the play calling, like this run game is going to be night and day difference over the last 2 years.
Yeah. And it is nice that should there be an issue with the offensive tackles, and you can run more with you have offensive tackles that are healthy, but like they can lean on their interior and just run it downhill in the middle if they need to. It's nice to see that because we're not feeling so hot about the backup tackle situation. So it's at least good to know that worst case scenario, it seems like this team can just run it if they need to close out a game.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so let's get into some other takeaways here. I do want to mention again, we've talked a lot about the young defensive backs. And I wanted to bring this up specifically because Dean Leonard, I felt like was arguably the standout of the game on defense. I thought he had a great pass breakup. Obviously he recovered the fumble. He has really, really taken very positive steps forward in this preseason, in comparison to what he was last year. So Dean Leonard forced 4 incompletions this preseason, which is 4 more than he did last year. He was the second highest graded run defender across the 3 games, according to PFF. And I know PFF grades can be very subjective and hit or miss, but still, that's a very notable statistic, in my opinion, because he's a cornerback, because he doesn't get that many opportunities to be in there. But he's really gone out of his way to show that improvement in that regard. And so I think that there's several players who could be, nominated for this award, but I think Dean Leonard is clearly my choice for most improved player from last year to this year. And I think that he's, obviously we know what he can do on special teams. Kevin pointing out, he had the rough rep against Brandon Ayuk. That's understandable. Brandon Ayuk's one of the best receivers in the league, but the way that he bounced back and really looked so comfortable against the second units. And I thought that Dean Leonard was fantastic again last night. And, I don't know if we want to do game balls today or not, but if we do, Dean Leonard is my choice.
Yeah, most improved, I would consider him potentially preseason MVP to a certain extent. Like,
sure.
Again, I said it the last time we talked. I've been so wrong about this guy, the turnaround that he's had. And I know I saw some comments like, well, he played in Canada. I totally get that. There's just a huge jump, though, still. Jumping also near against Jameson Williams and, oh, gosh, who's the receiver for the Texans? Had cancer.
Oh, Mechie?
Yes. He's going from...
at Alabama, you mean? Okay.
Yeah, playing against Alabama. Yeah, Richard, he was playing against those guys. It's like, it's a very different jump. And it didn't look so good. And then he jumps to the NFL. And his improvement... I don't recall what it looked like when Michael Davis was first jumping into the league and how fast he got, really some playing time. I feel like I don't remember him much in the preseason. I remember him more just because guys got hurt. He played in the regular season.
Sure.
That's kind of how I remember Michael Davis. But I mean, I'm not saying he's heir apparent, but Dean Leonard, you feel very good about the trajectory of where he's going. And it's not like he has a very limited skill set or he's not very athletic. This is someone you can continue to develop, and we're just seeing a perfect match between skill set and coaching and technique. I know there were moments, I don't remember what Dean Leonard officially gave up, but when he gives up a play, it's like, well, what else could you have done, in some of those instances? Or it's like, okay, yeah, Ayuk got him on one, but this is a 7th rounder last year. He's exceeded expectations by miles. I can't believe how good he looks after just 1 year. And really, the first game of the preseason last year against the Rams, he was a player where everyone was like, oh God, he's terrible. But to see him in a year turn it around like he has, to the point where you feel pretty darn good about him as one of your backups. I mean, I'm impressed. I'm seriously impressed. They didn't take a corner in this draft, right? Yeah, they didn't take a corner in this draft. Nope. And this is one that feels justified. I feel really, really good about him. He's been awesome.
Yeah, so in the 3 games as a whole, Dean Leonard was targeted 12 times, 61 coverage snaps. He only allowed 4 receptions on those 12 targets. 2 of those catches were Brandon Ayuk last night. So, pretty good. Forced incompletion percentage is 33% with the forced incompletions. His passer rating when targeted was 59. Those are all very, very above average numbers. And the way that he played, it's like almost like we should have expected it, if that makes sense. Like he just looked so comfortable out there that he looked like somebody who's not really,
Mm-hmm.
a former 7th round pick, maybe potentially fighting for a roster spot. He looked like he was a starter playing against backups. Like that's how comfortable he looked throughout the preseason. And it's such a positive step. We obviously we're pretty excited about Jasir Taylor. We haven't really seen him play all that well in the preseason, but Dean Leonard has looked really, really good. He's had some really fantastic moments throughout all 3 games in practices. You've mentioned this, the pass breakup against Mike Williams in the scrimmage, pass breakup against Keenan Allen in practices. He had some good moments against the Saints receivers. So it's been a really, really great story, and I think a story that has kind of slipped under the radar a little bit in terms of Chargers coverage this year.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see who found him, to be completely honest. Like who decided that like that's a player we should go draft? Because I think Xander was the one where the agent was kind of pushing the Chargers to take him.
Yeah.
Dean, I don't know where they found him. Like I know where, but like I don't know how. Like who pounded the table for Dean Leonard? Give that guy a raise, and whoever it was, awesome.
Yeah.
Has he played much? No, he's only played 2 slot snaps over the last.
No, so that's the other thing is he's very clearly like a potential Michael Davis replacement. Like I would love for this team to be able to keep Michael Davis, but like stylistically, like Dean Leonard and Michael Davis are your 2 very clearly like we're outside corners. This is our bag. Like we're gonna be the big physical guys. On his pass breakup, it looked just like a Michael Davis play. Like if when they showed the replay, he did an inside stab, he won the leverage right away, he trailed the coverage on the inside, and then he made a play on the football. It was a fantastic rep. Mark Webb almost came down with that interception, but Dean Leonard looks good, man. I'm excited to see his development and see if he can, potentially earn a role this season.
Technically, I hope he doesn't. But next year. Next year
is fair. All right, Tyler, do you have another takeaway from last night?
Tight end 3 might be tight end 5. I just prefer, and look, part of it is maybe usage or whatever. Obviously, I'm sure McKitty was going up against more of the better 49ers defenders. They're retiring Antonio Gates' number at some point this year. He's going into the Hall of the Ring of Honor. And Antonio Gates finished with more receiving yards in the preseason this year than Trey McKitty did.
Jesus.
And look,
you had to put it that way.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, it is not entirely on this player. And I haven't watched the game back on all 22, so maybe he was open more. But they gave him triple the routes run than he has in any of the last 2 seasons, going from 11 routes run to 37. And he has -3 yards. He has, for his entire career in the preseason, 12 yards in the preseason. And I don't know, man. Again, I don't think it's completely on him. We've been fair to highlight the positives throughout training camp. After the scrimmage, we both talked about him. Maybe things will be better in the regular season. But I'm just struggling to find. I mean, Brandon Staley has said over and over to him more than anybody else, or about him more than anybody else.
Yeah.
This preseason season is huge. You need to have a good preseason. I don't think -3 yards is what they were hoping for.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, like his primary role is as a blocker, but even to that point, again, PFF grades subjective. I disagree with a lot of what they do over there from a grading perspective. But Trey McKitty was their lowest graded run defender. Stone Smart was not much better for what it's worth. And I think he's really being overvalued right now. Personally, we'll get into that in a second. I think a lot of the allure of Stone Smart right now is that people are so just done with Trey McKitty right now.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that's fair. I think that's totally fair. I totally get it. Stone Smart has looked good, but I would pump the brakes a little bit on Stone Smart. Regardless, Trey McKitty has had about the worst possible preseason that we could have hoped for. I think, like you mentioned at the scrimmage, I thought he showed some really good signs. I thought he was, he was the clutch catch, right? Like, and other than that, I thought he had a really good blocking performance. And then Brandon Staley was like, well, he's still got to prove himself after the game. And rightfully so. Like, I thought it was a little bit harsh at the time, but rightfully so. So it's frustrating to see somebody who put in a lot of extra work this offseason, presumably, going to tight end U, getting his body right, and just has not come to fruition. So I think the Chargers have to go veteran hunting on the waiver wire at this point to get a legitimate blocker, like inline blocker. And that's the other thing here is that you could keep Stone Smart on the roster for sure. He can be your tight end 4, but he's not replacing Trey McKitty. It's not a 1-for-1 swap because Stone Smart is not an inline blocker. He's not somebody that you want sealing the edge and setting the tone on the inside and reaching backside cutoffs. Like, that's just not his bag. Like, the way that they've been using him as a blocker is, I think, very appropriate, where he's blocking cornerbacks, safeties, linebackers in space. He's not doing much inline stuff. That's very appropriate. But Trey McKitty, like, I think he could make the roster, and then as soon as they find somebody different, he's kind of the cut candidate. But it's unfortunate, man. Like, I hate to see players, lose these jobs and not perform well because, like, this is their life. Like, this is their job. But Trey McKitty just has not worked out this year. And sometimes you just got to move on.
Yeah. If this were a 7th round pick or undrafted free agent or 6th round pick, 5th round pick, that's it.
I think it would have been it after the season if that were the case.
Yeah, potentially so. Yeah, it's been rough. So I hope for better. Things change in the regular season. What are you trying to pull up here? Stone Smart.
Yes, as Thomas points out, Stone Smart is insurance for Gerald Everett. Like, that's his role. He's backup Gerald Everett. Yeah,
of course. And he's got some mild Steven Anderson in him in that sense, but he's like, I forget what we figured out the Chargers average tight end draft pick was, but it's like 240, 250 for these guys for like the blockers that they'd want. I don't know if he's bulked up, but he's listed at 226, both on his RAS and on the team website. I loved what he did. He's made great blocks. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't want to say like he's not a good blocker. He's made great blocks. He's just, what you're saying, not the inline guy that they need.
Right.
So yeah, I agree. I think they trade, free agent signing, whatever. I think you got to make the move, and it's tough, but yeah, it just hasn't been what we'd hoped for.
Yeah. There's some Mo Alley Cox rumors out there. There's some other tight ends that could potentially be available. Max Williams is still a veteran free agent. The Cardinals are, tanking. Maybe they could finally get that Jess Swaim deal worked out. But it's just, you got to get something done. I would hate to see this run game not reach its potential because of poor blocking at the tight end position again for the 2nd year in a row. So, the Donald Parham, I think, can be workable at that spot. I think Trey McKitty, if he's right, can be workable at that spot, but that's not what you want. That's a very low bar. You want your bar to be good, positive blockers, and that's just not what they have right now.
Yeah, you actually do not have a good blocker on your team, probably. And I don't think even if you're more optimistic about Donald Parham, and I lean more optimistic, he's unreliable. Like, he didn't play this last preseason game because he got hurt again.
Yeah.
Granted, it's kind of precautious. Brandon Staley said precautious, and now I'm saying precautious. Precautionary. But still, very worrisome. And we definitely, I'm sure every fan in this chat definitely did not talk about the tight end depth all offseason.
No, it couldn't have been us. It was only the best tight end class ever in the history of tight end classes. Yeah.
But the chat didn't want a tight end ever, I'm sure. We never talked about tight ends or anything. Everybody did. It's not a surprise.
No, it's not. Unfortunately not. Last thing before we get into the roster here. Charger special teams, man. Like, we've talked about Ryan Ficken a lot. J.K. Scott looks like a legit weapon this year. I think last year he was very, very good. And I think the way that they had his plan really executed their vision for him. But last night and throughout all of this preseason, J.K. Scott has been hitting bombs. And I've loved to see his development. They obviously brought him back for a long-term deal. And obviously the kicking unit needs to be settled, but J.K. Scott looks really, really good. They're getting great production from any gunner who plays at this point. Keelan Doss is not exactly a super fast player, but he has looked really good as a gunner. Taiwan Mullen has made some plays as a gunner, and we obviously know what Dean Leonard and Jasir Taylor did last year. So this punt unit in particular is a very, very big advantage for the Chargers. And now that J.K. Scott is maybe showing off his distance a little bit more, it's an exciting unit to watch. And unfortunately, I think might lead Brandon Staley to be a little bit more passive on fourth downs. But we'll see how that one goes. But it's been really good unit to watch this year.
Yeah, so let's see, 48.5 yards per attempt. That's 3.5 more yards than last year during the preseason. I love watching punts where the camera goes up and they lose the ball and they have to kind of like shift over, when like you're watching football games and the announcer's like, whoa, what a booming punt. And we haven't really had, we sort of had that with J.K. Scott last year, but it feels like every time this dude punts the football, it's gone. Like this thing is gone. It's up forever. I don't remember what it was after this game. I can look it up while we're talking, but I think after last game, I think he led the NFL in hang time.
Him and Jordan Stout were right there.
Yeah. Just a weapon and very accurate, it seems too. The unit is just completely in sync. We'll see what happens with the kicker, of course, but I feel good either way they go. It's just, and now you've added Darius Davis, of course, which it wasn't so hot last night, but that's fine. That's also not your starting group out there. Feel pretty good, man. Like the Chargers to have both a returner and a punter to be weapons kind of for the offense or defense in a way is just awesome.
Yeah.
Like just the hidden yards that will get this team to another win. And, you can't really maybe quantify it necessarily during every game. Well, I guess you can, but the hidden yards will amount to something in the end. So yeah, it's awesome.
And that was such a big issue for this team in 2021. Like if Ryan Ficken were around in 2021, that team probably makes the playoffs. It's such a big difference. And, I'm heading into the season and expecting a good special teams unit, if not a very good special teams unit. So love Ryan Ficken, love what he's brought to this team. And, excited to see how it really comes to fruition throughout the whole season. All right, Tyler, any final thoughts from last night before we dive into our roster prediction?
No, they'll all kind of tie into the roster prediction.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so as always, we do have a Google Sheet up, and we'll go through and put all of these players and kind of sort them out as much as we can. This is the whole depth chart, right? Or this is not the 53 from last time. Thank you for making it bigger. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Okay,
most of the contenders. It's not. We've cut off some of the. Yeah. No offense.
No worries. Okay, so let's do offense first, and then we'll do defense and special teams. Should we start with the quarterbacks? Do you want to start with the wide receivers? Do you want to start with the offensive line?
The quarterback one is such the debate because that's the spot that frees up the other spots that we need to talk about. Yeah. So I guess we should. Why would they? I mean, I know why, but why would they not keep three quarterbacks in the year they actually benefit a bit more from keeping a third quarterback? I know the answer, Chad. I know the answer to that question. I watched the game last night too, but I don't know, man. It's so tough. There are so many players, and we'll talk about running backs soon, who deserve to be on this team. Not that Duggan doesn't deserve it, but other guys deserve it a bit more. It's just, I don't know, man. I don't see how another team goes out and claims Duggan. And if they do, are you losing as much sleep over it? I don't think so. But the Chargers every year keep three quarterbacks, even if and they've had much better QB2s in the past. and they still kept their quarterback. So I don't know. I think they cut him, but I'm prepared to be completely wrong again.
Yeah, I think that the Chargers should take advantage of having that extra roster spot on the 53. I understand if they view it as they'd rather have the roster spot advantage on the 48. That being said, like I keep on thinking about this and like what they're going to do with Max Duggan and everything like that. And he hasn't exactly like looked great in the preseason as a passer. I think he's done some really good things with his legs, but he just does not look super comfortable as a passer right now. And I think that's fair. He's coming from an air raid offense where it was mostly like 4 receiver sets, and if my first read is not open, I'm just going to take off and run. Like that's what his offense was, and that's okay. To me, I think they've been so intentional about Easton Stick and getting him reps that that's kind of an indication that they would rather have a solidified quarterback 2 situation than run it back with 3 quarterbacks. So I think I'm going to side with you. I think I'm going to side with Daniel Popper on this one and say that Max Duggan does not make the roster. And I think there's just not the same level of concern about somebody else claiming him. I think there were several reporters who, over the years were always suggesting that if Easton Stick were to get cut, that other teams would have claimed him. And I think there's some validity to that. I don't feel the same way about Max Duggan. I don't think that he's put enough good things out on tape. I don't think there was really enough interest in him as an undrafted free agent where there's going to be enough teams who had him highly graded to go claim him. And one of those teams who potentially would be interested in him just traded for Trey Lance. So I think Max Duggan is officially a cut candidate.
Yeah. I don't feel good about that because of the past, but yeah.
Well, and we said this the other day too. It's like, if anything happens to Herbert, I think they would just go sign a veteran to back up Easton Stick and not have Max Duggan back up Easton Stick. Like, I think that's just the reality. And I think that has to play into his roster role.
Yeah, I agree. Can we go to tight end and receiver before running back? Because I feel like those inform what happens at running back.
Sure. So I think the first thing we can do with the receiver is move Jalen Guyton to the PUP list. I think he's made some progress, but I think they can afford to be patient with him. So I think that they can hold him on the PUP list until the bye week. And so that's opening up a spot, if you will. But I would not expect to see Jalen Guyton be on the initial 53-man roster.
Nope. PUP list. It makes sense. Like, use it, I guess. Like, keep another receiver or whoever, keep that spot for somebody else. So yeah, Jalen Guyton, PUP list. And so I guess the question, who's the other receiver? Do they keep 6?
Yeah, that's the debate. Outside of the quarterback, I think that's the biggest debate is that receiver position. So we talked a little bit about on the Chargers channel, the whole like Josh Palmer versus Quentin Johnston thing. I think Josh Palmer is very clearly that wide receiver 3. Obviously, the debate here is Keelan Doss versus John Hightower. Terrell Bynum has looked okay at certain moments, but really it's Doss and Hightower. What is your read with those two?
I think it's about how you finish. And I think Keelan Doss is the guy who's finished stronger. Again, Hightower, very much so, is, I think, a better complement to maybe what they want on offense, especially with Jalen Guyton out. But at this point, Doss has just been the consistent guy. And I think Hightower hasn't really done much. He really needed something in that last game, and it just didn't happen. Second game, okay, he's coming back, fine. Third game, needed more. Now, I know like the quarterbacks didn't help him either, but yeah, not a great finish to the preseason for John Hightower. So I think it's Doss. I think it's Doss, or honestly just 5 receivers. But for now, I think it is Doss.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Doss right now as well. I would prefer them to keep Hightower just because I think that's a better balance of skill sets. But ever since Hightower got that little injury, we just have not seen him perform. And it's unfortunate, but that's the life of a roster bubble player. So I think Hightower, unfortunately, did not do enough in the preseason. I don't think he did enough as a special teams player to be on the roster. I think if he had continued to build those practices up into, quality performances in the preseason, it would have been him as a no-brainer. But Keelan Doss has just been really steady for this team. He's worked with the first team offense periodically all throughout training camp, which we didn't really see John Hightower do a ton of. But as Daniel Popper pointed out in his prediction article, every single walkthrough, the team always separates first team and second team, and Keelan Doss was always with the first team offense. So I think that's enough. We can come back and officially make our decision on Doss in a second here. But if they keep 6 receivers, I do agree. I think it is Keelan Doss.
Yeah, I'd agree. My only thing, I guess, with this is how close is Jalen Guyton to returning? We don't know.
Right.
He's got like a little bit where it's like, oh, he's working off to the side. And that's great. But that could be months. It could be weeks. It could be tomorrow. I don't know. So, yeah, Doss would be my lead for now if they keep 6. But there is part of roster construction where you might look at another player rather than a 6th receiver.
Yeah. So let's you can take Hightower out. Let's leave Doss on there for now.
Okay.
And we can come back to that.
All right.
Tyler, I think we have one of your students in the chat right now.
Oh, hey, do your homework. Oh, I don't give homework. Do your something else.
Go study.
Go study.
All right, let's do the offensive line next. It's one thing I do want to point out is Brendan Hymas has looked much more comfortable at center. That appears to be his best position. I think he's played really well in the preseason at center. Obviously, you're not keeping 6 centers, but I did want to mention that he looks more at home there.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely somebody you want to bring back on the practice squad. And maybe next year you have a bit of more of a competition for center too, depending on what happens with Will Clapp. But Hymas, I think we can take off and put him at practice squad.
Yeah, I'd agree. Hymas, I don't know if it's like Ryan Hunter's a good comparison, but could be kind of like their swingish backup practice squad interior guy. Although
Sure.
Hunter's not on the team anymore.
Sure. Oh man, we got a bot. Get out of here, bot.
Go away, bot.
All right. Ban. Okay. Austin Pleasance played guard this week. I think he probably is better at guard than tackle.
He looked good. He looked all right.
Yeah, he looked okay. But yeah, practice squad for sure.
Respect.
I think this is the 9.
Yeah.
I think Zach Bailey should be swing tackle, but I think it's Foster Sorrell's job. It is what it is, but I think this is the 9 because I think they really, really like Zach Bailey as kind of a swing everything. He took reps at 4 of the 5 spots along the offensive line at some point throughout training camp. Reportedly has looked good at all of them. So I think Zach Bailey is going to be tremendously valued for this team. And I think he definitely is a roster lock at this point.
Yeah, watching him play tackle yesterday, I almost wondered why that wasn't kind of the
why that wasn't
plan.
happening from the jump.
So at least they figured it out in the end, right? At least they kind of gave it a shot in the end. So, but yeah, he looked good. Bailey has looked very consistent. I think the numbers back that up too. So I'm happy with him on the team.
I will say, to Foster's credit, I think he looks much more comfortable at right tackle than he did at left tackle throughout the preseason and training camp. But yeah, I would much prefer to see Zach Bailey get out there instead of Foster Sorrell.
Yeah, he's looked good. All right, so we got our 9. Oh, I need to start doing numbers. Hold on. 2.
Oh, you have the formula this time. Nicely done.
Yeah, look at us. Go math.
Go math.
All right. We got 2 quarterbacks. All right.
At tight end, or obviously we can. Xander's making it. He's a core 4 special teams player, so I think his use as a fullback is not going to be very high this year. But special teams, this team really likes him there. Okay, tight ends. What are you doing here? Because like I said, I think people need to pump the brakes a little bit on Stone Smart. But what's your read there?
Oh man, okay. Now I feel like I know where you're leaning, which might be the opposite of where I am. So no Camp Moyer, although I think he's potentially a better blocker.
He's Cam man. Like he's solid. He's a great blocking tight end for the second and third team unit.
Yeah. I'm going to say that they keep 4 for now, for the 4 tight ends. We can circle back and change that. I just think Smart. I think these 2 offensive guys, Dotson and Smart, have done quite a bit for themselves to show up every week and put good things on film for them to keep them. They've been high on Stone Smart. They kept him around last year, got him this year. He's Gerald Everett insurance. Parham can't quite do it. McKitty, I haven't seen him really do what Everett can do. Smart, I think, could maybe fill that role if needed. So I think he's valuable enough, and you don't know, like this entire tight end room could be overhauled and gone next year.
Yeah.
So I think Stone Smart is a guy you want to keep and keep developing.
Your student says that you're his favorite teacher or her favorite teacher. I don't know which one it is, but you're their favorite teacher.
That's a given.
I mean, you don't give homework, so
yeah. What is homework?
Yeah.
Go have a life.
Okay, so I think on the initial 53-man roster, I think we do see 4 of them. I think that Stone Smart has done enough to earn a roster spot. I just kind of disagree with like how he's being portrayed right now.
Yes.
So I think it's fair that he makes the roster spot. To me, if you're debating Stone Smart versus Keelan Doss versus Elijah Dotson, I think Stone Smart would probably have the best chance of being active on the roster.
Yep.
Because I think he can give you something different than the other tight ends. Even if you upgrade over Trey McKitty, I think Stone Smart can still have a role on offense, even if it's kind of sparingly. So
yeah,
of those 3 like bubble guys, I think Stone Smart has the best chance of being active. Although I would say Dotson has probably had the best preseason.
Yeah, I would say Dotson is the one I'm most worried about being claimed.
Yeah,
and also the best preseason. So, which makes things a bit dicey. So we'll come back to this.
Yeah, but I think in terms of roster spot, I think Stone is the safest of the 3.
Yeah, I would agree there.
So I think we can have 4 there. Running back wise, Husman looked good last night. I hate that he was injured because I really like the way he played last night. 12 carries, I think it was like 4.5, close to 5 yards per carry. So it was a good performance from him. I can't believe they gave him 12 carries. We're able to give him 12 carries.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, I don't think that he's going to make the roster. I think he's a practice squad guy.
Yeah, practice squad guy. Obviously, the guy. If everybody else, oh no, because they have the guy who's I didn't even know that they signed him when we talked about him, and I've already forgotten his name.
Shimpkins.
Yeah, sure.
Shampkins. Something like that.
Shamklin. I don't know. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I hope you don't watch this. I forget your name. I apologize.
Yeah. Thomas Martinez pointing out Husman is a tank. I think if I'm predicting how this is going to go, I think Elijah Dotson gets cut, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would agree.
Aaron Shamklin, that's his name.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody in the chat.
Best of luck to him. I would agree, and I hate it. They've kept 4 running backs very consistently, so that's not like a new thing if they did.
Yeah,
but I don't know, man. I hate this one.
I do too. But part of the reason why they've kept 4 running backs in the past is because it's been so uncertain. You've had a guy in that room that's maybe a little bit unproven, so you want some flexibility. Like last year, it makes sense to keep 4 running backs because Isaiah Spiller was injured. He's just not ready yet. This year, I think you feel good about Eckler, Kelly, and Spiller and where each of them are at. I know Spiller last night didn't have the greatest game, but I thought he looked good against the Saints. I thought he looked good against the Rams. So I think you feel good about those 3. And Kelly can play special teams. He has that value. I think Elijah Dotson can be, if he makes it through, I think he's probably your best practice squad player. But I don't see the value in keeping 4 running backs this year because the other guys ahead of Dotson are all pretty solidified.
Yeah, I'd agree. And if we complain about not having 6 wide receivers last year, then I think we have to keep consistent with that and get 6 this year, regardless if you feel Dotson has been better than Doss or Hightower or whatever. And technically, I think Doss's spot is just sort of a temporary thing if we keep him because it's guidance if he's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I dislike it very much, but a lot of guys deserve to be on the roster. He's one of them. I loved his preseason. I just think they go 3 here.
Yeah. I hope he doesn't get claimed. I really hope so, but I think he showed enough where he probably could make an active roster, just not this one.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, that hurt. All right.
Yeah. As a reminder, it's not that the Chargers will keep X player over X player, especially when they're at different positions. And also, this is just the initial 53. Like, there are going to be some changes. I think they're, like you're just talking about, Keelan Doss is probably a bit of a placeholder until Jalen Guyton gets healthy. And I think similar at tight end, I think Trey McKitty is a placeholder until they can find a different blocking tight end that they trust.
Yeah, I'd agree. So we're gonna go 6 wide receivers with Doss being the 6th.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I don't know about you, but I think Doss over Dotson, I think is the right call.
Yeah, in terms of predictions, I think so.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the defense. I think there's some more interesting debates over here as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, you feel great about the Chargers starting unit, especially with Austin Johnson coming back. Should we start with the defensive line? I feel like that's kind of the most interesting group to sort out.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
All right. So I think the players who are safe, I think you're doing this, but I think you can move Otito to PUP. I think he's further away from coming back than Jalen Guyton for what it's worth. Obviously, Jalen Guyton has been at practice more frequently recently, but I think the players who are safe in the defensive line room are Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, and Nick Williams. And Scott Matlock, I would be shocked if they cut him. So the debate, I guess, is Christopher Hinton versus Gerard Clark versus David Moa versus CJ Okoye. Where are you at with that group?
We predicted Gerard Clark initially because Chris Hinton, wasn't doing a ton, and we felt good about him developing maybe, and we heard that maybe they felt good about him, and then they just kind of made him like the 3rd guy while Austin Johnson was hurt. So I just think because of the number of snaps that he's received, working a lot with the first unit while some guys were hurt, I think Hinton is the safe guy here. So I think Gerard Clark has the best chance of the other guys to make it, but I think that he is the odd man out here if they're keeping 6.
Yeah, similar to Dotson, I think unfortunately they're not going to be able to hold him. I think that he's statistically speaking, like I think he's up to 8 run stops on the preseason. So he's been good in his role, but we need to pay attention to the reps when it comes to these kind of conversations. I know that everybody wanted Gerard Clark to be the guy. We predicted him initially, but Christopher Hinton was first team nose tackle pretty much right away. And he stayed with the first team throughout the entire training camp and preseason. Gerard Clark never really got to make that leap. And I think some of that is just that Christopher Hinton can do more things. I think he can play in the nose. I think he can play the 3 tech. I think he can play the 5 tech. I think he can rush the passer. I think he can stop the run. And I think that he's just further along in his development. I think there's just more consistency and versatility there. So I hope the Chargers are able to keep Gerard Clark. I definitely think that he is a practice squad player that I would be interested in keeping, but I do think Christopher Hinton has beaten him out.
Yep. Good for him. That was a surprise for sure. Before we started the year, I wouldn't have guessed that.
And regarding CJ Okoye, the Chargers do have an exemption status with him. Tom Telesco was asked about this last night on the broadcast. So as long as he clears waivers, which he should, I think he's flashed some really interesting things, but he's played 3 football games in his life, so he should clear waivers. And the Chargers can keep him on the practice squad for 2 years. And that's another benefit because that basically means that they have 17 practice squad spots instead of 16 because of the international pathways rules, I guess. Yeah.
And then, another player we weren't so sure about was Nick Williams. Like, okay, is he just a veteran? Then you bring him in, whatever. But he's not played. He's making the team. So that was kind of up in the air a few months ago. He's pretty certainly making the team now.
Yeah. There were some people talking about this, about how like last year and the year previously, like the Chargers would cut Christian Covington and then keep Foster Morel and Braden Fajoko because they were worried about them like being claimed, and then they would switch the two basically after cutdown day because they were concerned about those guys being claimed. And some people were saying that they could do that again this year with Nick Williams and Gerard Clark. I think that in theory, that's a good idea. But I think this team is significantly higher on Nick Williams than they were about Christian Covington. I think Nick Williams is a very clear tier above Christian Covington. Covington played a bunch in the preseason each of the last 2 years. Nick Williams didn't see a single snap. Like they feel very comfortable with where he's at. Brandon Staley has gone out of his way several times to praise his play. So I think Nick Williams is closer to a starter than a roster bubble guy.
Yeah, I don't remember hearing, like a Khalil Mack, for example, go out of his way to say, "Oh, Christian Covington," maybe he did, and I missed it. But just hearing, "Shut up, motorcycle," over the past few weeks, just hearing his name over and over again, and him not playing. Yeah, Nick Williams on the team, no problem. Hope he's great. Good veteran. A lot of young guys in here, so a good veteran to have.
Yeah, I think that's fair. All right, let's get to the linebacker room. I think this is pretty straightforward. I think there are 5, and I think it's the 5 that we predicted heading into the season.
Yeah, no surprises there, other than there's no surprise cut there. Like this, that's the group.
No, the surprise really has been like the distribution of reps because I think a lot of us were very optimistic about Dayon Henley heading into the offseason, but he's been stuck on the third team, and the only time that he's been on the second team has been when Amon and Nick Niemann were both hurt. Even last night, he didn't rotate in with those two. He didn't like anything. It was third team reps exclusively. So I think people who are still holding out hope that Dayon would start over Kenneth Murray or like maybe replace Kenneth Murray midseason, I think this coaching staff views Dayon as kind of a redshirt candidate this year.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think do they have a good linebacker room? Not sure, but I think I feel good enough where he can do that for a year. And look, Kenneth Murray has looked really good in camp, so there's that. So yeah, but he is. We'll see how he rotates in, but he's firmly at best linebacker 4.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right. Do you want to do edge rushers or corners or safeties next?
Let's do edge because I think it's pretty simple. I think we both agree it's the 4 guys.
Yeah, I was curious if Carlo Kemp could do enough to maybe push this team to keep 5. He was really good in the first 2 preseason games. But last night, I think he got pushed around a little bit too much for my liking, especially in the run. I think that, similar to like an Emeka Egbule type, you feel decent enough about like activating him off of the practice squad and maybe seeing some action in a pinch, but I don't think he did enough to be a roster lock at this point.
Yeah, I agree there. I really wanted one of these edge rushers to do just like that one last game to really even if it's just the practice squad, but like be the obvious practice squad guy. And there really wasn't one in the end there. I was kind of bummed.
Yeah. All right. This team loves to keep 10 defensive backs. I think we have to sort through this a little bit here. Obviously, JC, Asante, Derwin, Elohi, Michael Davis, Ja Taylor, Dean Leonard, JT Woods are safe. I think that Raheem Lane is safe. He hasn't done a ton in the preseason, but he's a core 4 special teams player. Is that enough for you to put him on the roster as a lock at this point?
Yeah, I think Raheem Lane's a lock. I think he's been good enough in camp. Some guys are hurt. Sometimes he plays first team in camp. Mark Webb, obviously, when he's come back, has played more. But he's involved enough and a core special teamer and a good one at that, yeah, I think he's a lock. I think he's just kind of Nick Niemann for this team, where he's just, they might start someone else over him on defense, but they love him on special teams.
I saw the comments about the PTSD. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up the PTSD.
That's fine. That's fine.
But yes, I agree. I think Lane is safe, but I wanted to check in and see where you were at as well. I think he's a core special teams player. He's a starter in all 4 units. So the debate is really, what do we think this team thinks of Mark Webb at this point? Obviously, they were pretty high on him when they drafted him, relatively speaking, for a 7th round pick.
Mhm.
He's been injured each of the last 2 preseasons. He was injured again this year. So to me, it's Mark Webb versus Tywan Mullen. Maybe Cam Brown on the outside looking in. I think I would have loved for AJ Finley to get a legit chance, but I don't think it's
Yeah.
him. I think it's Brown or Webb or Mullen. What's your read on that trio?
Okay. Respectfully, I don't think it's Brown, so I'll delete him here. Respectfully, delete you from the Excel sheet. Finley as well, delete just to do that. I think the team is higher on Mark Webb, but I really love the way Mullen has played in the preseason as a tackler, as a run defender,
Yeah.
as a guy who's going to continue to improve in the NFL. I don't know that Mark Webb has done so much that you worry about him being claimed, unless some team's really high on him, but they've already cut him before last preseason, and he wasn't claimed, although there was more of an injury there. But I think they really want to make him work after all these years, and he's finally healthy. I hope so. I think that he's the guy that they keep, but I really want to keep Mullen.
Yeah, man. I watching the film back of the last 2 games, Tywan Mullen was somebody who I thought really stood out. I think he is the perfect kind of slot defender for this defense. He loves to seek out contact. He's a great blitzer. I think he's a fantastic tackler in space. And you watch that third team and second team defense, and you look at the defensive backs, and Tywan Mullen has very clearly been like the biggest standout in that regard, in my opinion. But it's tough for me to see him get a roster spot and figure out a role, because if he makes this team, his biggest role is probably on special teams. Whereas if Mark Webb makes this team, he's the fourth safety. He's probably getting snaps at some point throughout the season
Yeah.
as a safety. Like, I think that the role on defense advantage would go to Mark Webb, even though I think Tywan Mullen has done more to elevate his stock throughout the preseason.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. Yeah, bummer for Mullen. We'll talk about practice squad later, but he's certainly a priority.
Yeah. So I do think that Mark Webb makes this. I think he is effectively safety 4, but really he's like the 10th DB in terms of making the roster.
Right. Yep.
All right. Special teams players. So does that say 26 or 25 at the bottom?
25.
Okay. So we're at 25 and 25 on each side. Perfect. Okay. So special teams, we know J.K. Scott is safe. We know Josh Harris is safe. The kicker debate has kind of come back a little bit, I guess, with Dustin Hopkins performing and coming back from the injury and looking good. Do you think he has done enough to hold off Cameron Dicker, who I think is at like 92.5% on the preseason, or do you think this is Dicker's job at this point?
Yeah, it was close, I think, earlier this offseason, but Hopkins has not kicked until recently, and I just think you don't want to head into the season with another player you're worried about him getting hurt again. And Dicker's been way too good. There's no reason to not keep Cameron Dicker. Honestly, I respect the experience, but at this point, they've had Dicker kick 50 something kicks in camp and in the preseason.
Mm-hmm.
He hit his 50 yarders. Like, it's over for Hopkins, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I think if Hopkins had come back, or if he had stayed healthy, rather, I think you probably could have made a bigger argument for Hopkins. But not only was Hopkins injured, while he was injured, Cameron Dicker went on like a tear where there was like, 90%, 90%, 90%. Obviously, some days where he was kicking 100%. So I think that Cameron Dicker has had a great summer. I think he's been really the kind of player that you want to see in a position battle, who has seized his opportunity, seized his role. Apparently there are some people who are like concerned about his leg strength. I don't share that concern at all. In fact, I think that he can go out to 55 plus and still be an effective kicker. Like, I think he has a legitimate leg where he can, show off more than what he did last year. Dustin Hopkins, for what it's worth, has like more hang time on kickoffs, like by a very slim margin. But I just think that if you cut Cameron Dicker, he's getting claimed elsewhere in a hurry.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that you're potentially missing out on a long-term kicker solution. Whereas Dustin Hopkins, his best case scenario is that he kicks this year, and then you have to cut him next year because of his cap number, because they are $60 million in the red. So I just think that Cameron Dicker is the better kicker right now, and I think he's the better long-term option.
Yeah, I would agree. Cameron Dicker, if there's any questions of his leg, it's not his leg strength. It's just we haven't seen him hit from 50 plus. It's more like opportunities than it is about leg strength, I think.
Yeah.
So I don't have any questions of that. And even then, I don't think Hopkins has some significantly stronger leg anyway.
No. And obviously it's, unfortunate Dustin Hopkins losing his job because of injury, essentially. But
yeah,
it is what it is. We'll always have that Denver game-winning kick moment in our minds, and how he saved the kicker situation in 2021.
I know. I don't remember the last time we cut a kicker and we're sad to see him go. So
yeah, it would have been cool to cover like a legit kicking battle. So that's another thing that sucks about Dustin Hopkins getting injured. But I think Cameron Dicker has just been too good. He's too young. He's got too much upside.
Yeah,
I think he's clearly the guy.
Yeah. So do we have the exact same 53 as Popper? Is that what we just did? I think so.
I believe so. Yes.
Well, that's
not intentionally, but
yeah, no, of course. No, not intentionally. Yeah.
My biggest curiosity, honestly, today was really like Doss versus Dotson. And I think we came to the right conclusion there.
Yeah. I like Dotson more, but yeah, they got to keep 6 wide receivers. They've been almost like they've tried their hardest to get any receiver they could find on this team.
Yeah.
To try to get the best 6 that they could. So yeah, they keep 6. It's a placeholder for Doss for now. It's not even really Doss over Dotson. It's just wide receiver over running back. And that same wide receiver is technically just Jalen Guyton not copy paste, placeholder.
Yeah.
Now.
And I do think that there's something to be said about Darius Davis's role here too, where he's probably not going to have much of a role on offense outside of like some gadget things, whereas Doss can be kind of that 5th receiver when you need one. So I think a 6th receiver is just more important than a 4th running back at this point.
Yes. Chat, how do we feel about the 2 quarterbacks? You think it's actually going to happen? That's the one, like everything rides on that, right?
Yeah. Because if you keep 3, then you're probably cutting Doss. I don't know. I don't feel great about that one.
Probably
Webb. So they do 9 defensive backs instead of 10.
I guess. I don't know. Just don't do it. How about
that? Just don't do either one.
Yeah.
All right. Running through things really quickly. Obviously 2 quarterbacks, Justin Herbert, Easton Stick. 3 running backs, Austin Eckler, Joshua Kelly, Isaiah Spiller. 1 fullback, Xander Horvath. 4 tight ends, Gerald Everett, Donald Parham, Trey McKitty for now, and Stone Smart. 6 receivers, Keenan Allen, Darius Davis, Mike Williams, Quentin Johnson, Josh Palmer, Keelan Doss with Jalen Guyton on the pup. 9 offensive linemen with Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, Corey Lindsey, Jamari Sawyer, Trey Pipkins, Foster Sorrell, Jordan McFadden, Will Clapp, and Zach Bailey. And then shifting to the defensive side here, if you could, Tyler. Sorry,
I fell asleep at the wheel. All right, hold on.
It's okay.
Here we go.
Defensively, we have 4 edge rushers, Joey Bosa, Tui Pelotu, Khalil Mack, and Chris Rumpf. 6 defensive linemen, Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, Christopher Hinton, Nick Williams, and Scott Matlock. 5 linebackers, Eric Kendricks, Eamon Ogbongbemiga, Kenneth Murray, Deion Henley, and Nick Neiman. 5 cornerbacks, J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel Jr., Michael Davis, Dean Leonard, and Jasir Taylor. 5 safeties with Derwin James, Alohi Gilman, J.T. Woods, Mark Webb, and Raheem Lane. Otito Ogbonia starts on the pup list as well. And then specialists, we have Cameron Dicker, J.K. Scott, and Josh Harris.
All right. I feel pretty good about that. I think if we get 50, if we miss anything, I feel like it's 51 out of 53. I feel like the margin for missing here is very small.
Yeah. I think it's really like you said, the quarterback is the one I'm most iffy on because like I think they could easily keep the 3 quarterbacks and they could use that quarterback as the placeholder spot. Keep Max Duggan and then cut him after the massive cut down roster day happens, and maybe he's your placeholder for the day. But
yeah,
that's the one I'm most iffy on.
We'll see. We have yet to be 100% correct. Mark Webb last year was the one that changed things for me. We were almost perfect, but it was Mark Webb that doomed our perfect prediction.
Yep. All right, Tyler, let's really quickly identify some of the practice squad guys we definitely want to keep around. Obviously, Max Duggan, definitely want to keep him on the practice squad because he's the quarterback. In an ideal world, who else are you keeping on the practice squad?
Someone we haven't mentioned, I don't know what his injury status is, but Blake Lynch, if he's still like healthy enough and okay.
Sure.
They need another linebacker out there. And I think that he performed pretty well in that second preseason game. Then he got hurt, but some good things from him. So I think him also is kind of a veteran guy. Ficken, I don't know if Ficken guy is the right way to say it, but knows Ficken, knows Jeff Howard, I believe, or maybe missed him by a year.
He was in Minnesota with both of them. Yeah.
Okay. So I think him, Mullen, we've talked about. Absolutely. Obviously Dotson. Absolutely. Hightower, more than welcome. Gerard Clark, Okoye. I would be fine with Moa as well. Who do you think the edge rusher is going to be, though? That's the one I'm not really so sure about.
Yeah, I could see Carlo Kemp looking for a better situation.
Yeah.
I think he's been on the team for a little while, and this kind of happens to guys like Isaac Rochelle, other guys who have kind of been on the team for a little bit, kind of prefer a new chance. So I could see him looking elsewhere. I think Ty Shelby you want to bring back, and I think Andrew Farmer you want to bring back as well.
I believe they've only kept one true edge rusher in the Staley era, which is 2 years. But yeah, we'll see. But I feel like they also had more D tackles before. Like there's always some combinations with like Covington, Cassiano, and those guys. So I think I think this is the year they go 2 edge rushers. I think Shelby and Farmer are your 1 and 2.
Yeah. One guy I definitely want to keep is Mikael Jones, the linebacker, number 49, who had, as you mentioned, the roadblock block of the day on Dion's interception. But, watching the preseason games back, I think you can see him really showing some great instincts, a really nice tackling ability. Last night, I thought he had some really nice tackles in space. So I think Mikael Jones is interesting enough, similar to like a Damon Lloyd type of player where you want to keep him around. I think they'll keep multiple linebackers on the practice squad. It's such a like special teams position too. Mikael Jones was kind of the play caller of that third team unit. Tom Telesco pointed out just like the energy that he plays with is really kind of infectious to that unit. So Mikael Jones is definitely somebody I want to keep around.
Yeah, that works for me.
Cornerback wise, I think definitely want to keep Mullen. I think Cam Brown as well. I'm not super attached to any of the other cornerbacks. I could see them keeping Jaquette again because they've kind of had a history there.
It's not Hankins, is it? Is Hankins the other corner?
Yeah, Hankins is the other one. I'd be okay with that, honestly. I think he showed
a veteran out there.
Yeah, a bit more of a veteran presence. So I wouldn't be shocked by that.
AJ Finley?
Yeah, AJ Finley for sure. I think I might have been maybe a little bit too high on him, but I think that he's an interesting player to keep around.
Yeah. All those guys, honestly, like I forget who said it earlier in the chat. This is a strong practice squad, as far as I'm concerned. A lot of half of them could jockey for the roster bubble spot, and they are just some guys over other guys. I hope Dotson sticks around, but I don't. This doesn't feel like a Bandy situation where nobody really wants the small, not super athletic. No offense, did great in the preseason, obviously, but it's just different. Dotson is someone with so many teams looking for the next running back, so they don't have to pay their guy next year. Dotson is a guy who's just like, let's add that.
Yeah, I unfortunately think Dotson and Clark get claimed elsewhere.
Yeah. Also Hymus. I didn't mention him, but Brendan Hymus.
Yeah, I think I mentioned him earlier, but definitely
Okay.
as your third center. Austin Pleasance you can keep around. The other offensive linemen didn't get a ton of playing time this offseason. I liked Jawari Branch at Maryland a little bit. We didn't see Isaac Weaver play hardly at all. I think he got cut actually. Andrew
I think
Trainer
so.
barely played. Matt Caskey barely played. So I think of the offensive linemen, you want to keep Hymus and you want to keep Branch. And Andrew Trainer is really your only other offensive tackle, but I don't know if you want to keep 3 offensive linemen on the practice squad. So,
And he's hurt still, I think. Or did they cut him?
who?
Trainer?
No, Trainer's back. He played last night.
Really? He's not on their depth chart. Is he really back?
Unless I'm tripping and saw a different number 60.
I thought they cut Trainer or waived injured.
Oh, Isaac Weaver is 60. Oh,
Gotcha.
I guess they did cut Trainer. My mistake.
Bummer. They just can't they cannot find a depth tackle. They don't even have a backup tackle on the depth practice squad then, right? Unless you count. Oh no, Pleasance.
No, Pleasance I think you can keep around. Apparently Thomas is saying that Dotson did say that Telesco was the only GM to call him on day 3 of the draft. Chargers were only one of the 8 teams that talked to him at all.
Wow.
But he's an older prospect because he's 24.
He's 24. Yeah, he's also
so I understand why there wasn't like a ton of interest in him in the after the draft, but you look up at the running statistics on PFF, like Dotson's one of the best in the league in the preseason right now. So I think he gets claimed, unfortunately.
Yeah. High profile rushing attack throughout the preseason, high profile team to a certain extent.
Moments too. Like he's had some great moments.
Yeah. So whether you look at the stat sheet or just some highlights, I think he's out there.
Yeah. All right. Well, there are some decisions that I think I would have made differently, and we'll see what happens. But I think this is the right 53 in terms of projecting it, but we'll see what happens. So, Tyler, any final thoughts before we head out?
Nope. We'll react to those cuts on Wednesday. You'll see the episode on Wednesday where we react to the cuts and the formation of the practice squad. If they get that in time by the time we record, we'll see, or whoever they bring back. So,
yep.
Yeah, should be fun. We're almost there. Then we have a dead week. And then we have stuff.
Yeah, but we'll have lots of good content coming into that couple weeks. So like Tyler mentioned, we will be reacting to the roster cuts on Tuesday on the Chargers channel, which will be publishing on Wednesday. A certain Caribbean dweller will be joining us next Thursday as well for a fun episode before we head into the actual season. And then we'll have some other great content throughout the rest of the season. So I'm excited to drop some things. I teased this a little bit in our Discord. We have a financial opportunity coming out on Labor Day, which we'll get into. And I'm very excited to release that out to the public. And hopefully you guys can jump on board and support the show in that regard. So should be a lot of fun. Cannot wait for the rest of the season. Thank you, Tyler, for joining me as always. Thanks everybody in the chat for tuning in today. If you are listening to this, make sure to leave us a rating or review. Watching, make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We always appreciate. And as always, that's going to do it for us. Bolt up. We'll see you next time.
Yes. Can't wait for Jack Sparrow next week.